The first time that I ever went to witness anything involving a paranormal investigation, it was an exorcism. It is a little bit of an exaggeration, but in 2014, I wanted to experience something because I've always had that interest in the paranormal. So what happened is I was on StumbleUpon. I found some local ghost hunting groups, and I sent out a message to one of them, and I said, "Hey, I'm trying to just have fun. I want to volunteer. If you guys need help, let me know." And that's when I started corresponding with Lisa. She is a psychic medium, and what would happen is she'd say, "So right now I'm dealing with a client named Charles. He, at some point, he did have an evil spirit attached to him, but it is gone. I've taken care of it. However, he still thinks that he is possessed. If you would like to witness this, it's going to be a very low-key night. You can see if you like it and check out our organization." So the night comes where I get to witness this exorcism. I arrive there an hour before Charles and his girlfriend at the time, Kat. And as I'm talking to Alicia, she's saying, "Okay, this guy, he's kind of insane, and he's a good guy. But he's just kind of crazy. He did have something, not anymore, and he's going to sit in this chair in the middle of our living room, and underneath the chair is a crucifix that was taped to it." And she said that if Charles was in fact possessed, he'll be squirming around as if he's experiencing great discomfort. And then the night goes on. Charles and Kat arrive. Charles sits in the chair, and Lisa's doing her typical, trying to say the prayers, trying to say like, "Charles, defeat the evil, go into the light." It's just like that mumbo jumbo that you'd see in in the movies. And it's not like Charles had some demonic voice that was like, "Oh, hail Satan," and she started. That's not like he started throwing the chairs or anything. He was just kind of sitting there like, "No, go F yourself. No, I'm not Charles." He had the ghost that he said was claiming him had some specific name that started with an S, like Sabavian or something. Well, I'll just call it Sabavian for now or something. And he's saying, "No, Charles is with me," and it's clearly psychosomatic, but I'm just kind of observing and letting it happen. And eventually, Charles is like, "Okay, I'll go into the light. Okay, I think I'm free now." And then he opens his eyes, and Lisa's like, "There's a crucifix taped underneath your chair, and if you actually were possessed, you'd be kind of squirming." Charles like, "Oh, I think he was trying to make excuses, but he was still very certain that he was possessed." So that was the first exorcism I ever witnessed, but to my understanding with Lisa's stories is that they absolutely can get out of hand. She used to live in Florida, and she'd been a psychic medium her whole life. So what happened was she came across a Catholic priest, and he decided that because Lisa had this talent, he would be able to use her in the sense that they'd be able to exorcise demons and people that were supposedly possessed. So she was trained under this Catholic priest, and she had quite the time. She learned how to do the basic exorcisms, and apparently there was a lot of the sage and sea salt and all the other earthly substances. But, not necessarily, I don't mean the weed, but you know what I mean. So, the first really major exorcism she ever took part in was a child that was about elementary school age. And one day, he just starts flipping his lid. His personality changes from that sweet little quiet shy boy to this point where he's screaming at his parents and he's cursing. And oddly enough, he starts speaking fluent Hebrew. He does not know a single word of Hebrew, but for some reason, he's speaking it fluently. So his parents come to the conclusion, "Oh, our son is probably possessed, and I think we need help." Lisa and the priest that she was training under are both called in. And she tells me that whenever you do an exorcism, apparently you need medical clearance from medical staff, because I believe there are cases, kind of like the exorcism of Emily Rose, where the possession can supposedly lead to death. And I don't know if that's just malpractice on the parts of the priest and the exorcist, or if it literally is something killing the person from the inside, but they had to get the medical clearance, and they start doing the exorcism. So this kid's tied to the bed, and Lisa describes the room as being deathly cold. So if you've ever seen the movie The Exorcist, that's a detail that actually is present. So in the priest, you can see their breath. I don't know if she could see her breath, but she described it as this eerie, deathly cold. And whenever she was standing close to the kid, she'd start getting these really evil visions in her head. So she'd start imagining just violence, just really grotesque things. And it's not like she was going out of her way to think it, it was just popping into her head. So those two things you could probably chalk up to, maybe it was a poorly ventilated room, and maybe it's just the atmosphere of the room was just kind of making Lisa feel more creeped out than it really was. But the strangest part was when they started doing the prayers, and the kid is very resistant. He does not want to take part in it. So he starts twisting his arm, and he twists it so much that his arm snaps. And Lisa and the priest have to continue until whatever it is gone. And that's about the extent of it. I don't really remember if there was anything else. Because I haven't really spoken to her in a very long time because she's moved far away, and she is, I believe, right now she has dementia, and if I contact her again, I'm afraid she's not going to remember me anymore, so it's kind of sad. But there, if you want to know who she is, she filmed a pilot for a TV show called I'll Haunt You When I'm Dead. And it involves her, her husband Ray, and Charles and Kat are also in this episode. It's on YouTube, as far as I know, but they took a lot of creative liberties. But the story is as follows. So, Charles was a Satan worshiper, so a lot of the psychosomatic tendencies might stem from that. Lisa says that when Charles was a Satan worshiper, something did in fact attach itself to him, and then Kat and Charles were experiencing something legitimate, but as soon as they called Lisa, Lisa took care of it, and there's just a bunch of other stuff that was going on that probably wasn't paranormal, just probably based on their personalities. Lisa was taking care of one of the ghosts. What happened was, the ghost had left Charles, and it had attached itself to Lisa instead. So from this point on, Lisa was now dealing with the ghost that Charles and Kat were experiencing. She said that she would wake up in the morning, and all of her kitchen knives would be scattered on the ground, and it was like they were making a semicircle around the kitchen. In the TV show, they depict her as living in a multi-story home. That's not the case. She lived in a very small home in Fullerton, very cramped, very cozy, but creative liberties. So besides that, she would wake up early in the morning, I want to say around like 4 o'clock, and she would hear this old Victrola music coming from the closet. And she described it as sounding like Lawrence Welk. I would assume something like the old foxtrots from the 1930s, 1940s. Just that really old, outdated big band music. And besides that, all of the kitchen drawers would open up at the same time. So she'd be cooking, and all of a sudden, bam, all the kitchen drawers open up by themselves, all of them simultaneously. And she had this feeling that something was there. And it wasn't until one night that she woke up and she finally caught a glimpse of the person that had attached itself to her. She described it as a male, and he was very skinny. It was like it was like a skeleton that had flesh on it with no muscles. She described this person as having greenish, grayish skin and just white, hollow eyes. I believe she said that they were white, glowing eyes. So she's laying in bed and she sees this person standing beside her, or standing across from her, just staring at her. And she's very desensitized to this, so she's not too terrified, but she's at that point where she's like, damn, I knew something was there, and I knew it was going to be something inconvenient. I believe that it would try to scare her and Ray every now and then by doing stuff like the knives, the the drawers, the music. Other than that, though, she described the person as being harmless. She nicknamed him Charlie. Nothing to do with my name, but she just started calling him that to piss him off. I was over with a group of friends. We brought out the Ouija board, and we were trying to contact whatever spirit was there. So, Ouija boards can easily be a load of BS. If you watch Penn and Teller, then you know a lot of it does involve very light touch, and it's incredibly easy to manipulate. So I had stepped away from the Ouija board. I was watching Charles and Lisa use it. At one point, I asked the question, "Can you give us a sign that you're there?" And there was this pound on the door the exact moment I said that. So I asked, "Can you do that again?" And there was another pound at the door. And this could be someone trying to mess with us. I'm not sure, because maybe I don't know if anyone could overhear us, because the front door was closed, and it was a rather thick door, so I don't know if they was able to hear voices through it. But anyway, there was that weird pound on it. Eventually, they found out that the name of this person was, I want to say it was like Yahim. It was Yaheem, or something like that, and they deduced that he came from Florida, killed himself in the 1960s, or something like that. See, I don't know about Ouija boards. I've heard people say that they've had very sinister experiences. I've heard people say it's just entirely a load. I've heard people say it's opening up a gateway to the unknown. Yeah, I don't care. It was just a little fun experience. But her encounter with that ghost was documented, so if you want to find out who she is and what she's like, there is a TV show, I'll Haunt You When I'm Dead. It was only a pilot, and a few creative liberties taken. I believe they're also editing some other stories in from other encounters to make it seem like one conglomerate, action-packed event, but really it was just something not so severe. Anyway, that's the story I have for right now. There'll be more to come. If you have your own story, I would love to hear it. Anyways, thank you very much for listening. So stay spooky, my friends.